Hey everyone, welcome to Be the Naked Truth.com. I love that in Spanish, /live. So we've been testing Restream streaming for 3 days. Today's our third day.
Today's day 3, and the tipping point was reached, was it not?
It was reached. And the conclusion is, bum, bum, bum. It's actually this way. And the reason
we're sure the Restream people are lovely people and working very hard, but this is just not going to do it for us. This is not going to work.
And the reason why is because we are focused on engagement. And engagement means having more people coming in and speaking with us in real time. And when we have amazing people join us and speak with us in real time, this is what happens. Hi, real people.
Our guinea pig of the day, Brian Miller, back on The Naked Truth. What's up, buddy?
What's going on? Thanks so much for having me back to test out a bunch of software that makes it hard to do what I'm here to do.
That's what we're here for.
That's what we're all about. That's pretty in a nutshell. So look what happens. You ready? So what's the best way to show this? So if you go ahead, take me away.
So here's the issue, guys. Now you've seen all three of us. Paul right here, Brian right here, and me right here. And who are you looking at, right? Like, who's talking? So now I'm talking. Are you looking at Brian if he's interested? Paul is making fun. Like, who are you, focusing on? So in order for me to have you focus on the person talking, I have to, let's see what happens here. I make myself spotlight, but now we have you as a hangout. Paul, remember the days of the hangout where we had you in the bottom?
So if I'm down here, can you still hear me?
I can hear you.
Can people watching here?
Yeah.
As long as you have us down here in the little film strip.
Right. So now you're in the big thing, and now we're the little ones in Hangouts, right? And the only way for me to flip between us is spotlight. So now I'm spotlighting you, but I was talking. So that was.
Then you feel like this. You're like, I'm paying attention. I'm engaging with my audience. I'm looking at it. I'm paying attention. Yeah. That's
exactly right. And if I don't
back
do
in
that,
the Google Hangouts days, yeah, totally.
Right. And now it's completely confusing. Who are we looking at? And who are we looking on? And the only reason to hide is
it's already like, yeah.
Why am I here? No, I actually have I have something to say about this though, and that is that I think when it comes to technology, when we're talking about connecting and engaging with an audience, with people, whether it's us in here, just the people that I'm in this with, or with the audience watching and trying to engage with us, maybe in the chat or whatever, you really want the technology to get out of your way, right? Yeah. Technology can be really cool, but as soon as you have to think about the technology, it breaks your concentration, and you're going to break your engagement within the room, which is going to break the engagement with the audience watching. And so this, to me, like, technology is really cool. I'm a tech guy, but if I have to think really hard about it while I'm doing it, it's not for me.
Yeah, no, and that is the challenge, right? So now basically what I have to do is, did you see that? How fast I was?
I did.
Going, right? It was catching up. and
Brian, I just want to say I really like your Zoom background. I don't know where you got that, but it looks really, really good.
Thank you. Yeah, I found a photo on the internet. I've got a green screen. It's right here. Yeah, lockdown's been okay for me, guys, as you can see.
It's fantastic. So actually, let's see if I can do that. So Stuart is asking, where are you? We're right here.
We're right here.
We're right here. Here we are. He's watching. So thanks for watching, Stuart. We are, where are we, Paul? We are on.
Well, we're sort of everywhere. We're simultaneously in Austin, Texas, Loudon, New Hampshire, and an undisclosed location in Connecticut.
So we are on the BeTheNakedTruth.com /live.
And we're all over the world.
And we're all over the world, everywhere. And if we want to bring in Brian, we're going to have to hide where we are. So by where we are.
That's fine. We brought in Brian today, gang, because Ifat and I have been talking about various, as part of we're all week long, we're thinking about things that we might want to talk about on any given show as like a quick lead in to start the rundown for the day. Then we're always making a list of things that we want to show for our Monday musings and talk about because we think that's fun. And then that spins us off sometimes into stuff that we're like, well, should we talk about that? And what came up over and over again were different incidents with like influencers. Like, so the first one that I brought up to Ifat at one point was, I was like, do you know about this whole call her daddy thing? And she was like, no, what's that? And I was like, well, I don't really know, but it's all over TikTok and it's all over like social. Everyone's making a big deal out of it. So clearly it's like a big deal to many people. Brian, are you familiar with this?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I followed it.
A sip. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so I followed the story a little. I had never heard of this podcast before the story. So, a week or two ago, I got caught up on it. Because I have a podcast, I'm going to pay attention to any news about podcasters. And
right.
Honestly, it I don't know what you want to talk about with that. It just sounded like some very bad business being done by people who are not business people. Basically,
right.
That business is being done by talent instead of business managers, and they got themselves into trouble.
Right. So these two women, they've got a podcast called Call Her Daddy. It's owned. The podcast was owned and started and owned by Barstool Sports, Dave Portnoy's company, big brand, multi-million-dollar brand. And so, they get to a point where they cultivate big following, big audience, time to renegotiate contracts. Something breaks down along the way, and then it becomes this big, messy, dramatic thing, right? And the fans get involved. And of course, some of them right away are mad at Dave Portnoy because they assume it's his company. He must not be being fair. He starts going on live streams and saying, hey, I'll just tell you, here's what it is. And he's telling his side of the story openly. Then it comes out that the two women maybe aren't on the same page themselves and aren't a united front. One maybe allegedly stabbing the other in the back and all this. And it goes on and it goes on. And so at one point it looks like show's over, done. Then it comes back. One woman stays, one is out, all this different stuff. And so I was amazed at the drama that people were tapping into online about it. Like, people were just getting all fired up, right? And I guess that's what you do with one of your favorite shows, right? When something happens, if your favorite show gets canceled, you're like, what the hell? So, but then I got to thinking, I was like, so wait a minute. So these two women are like, I think they're influencers and I don't even know who they are. Wow. And that's where I started spinning off into like, it's like the tree in a forest thing, right? Like, are you an influencer if there's a sizable amount of people who don't even know who you are and that you exist? And I started wondering about all that. And I was like, you know what? I've heard the term and used the term, and I don't even know, like, how do you actually define that term? What is an influencer? Does either one of you know?
Yeah, so hold on. Before we get there, I know I'm cutting in, but we have people watching us. So I want to remind everybody that we are spinning this on Friday. And the way that we're spinning, the way to get your name into the wheel of names is just by commenting and interacting and engaging with us. So as you're watching it right now, if you have any opinions about influencers, about anything that we're talking about the podcast, any of that jazz, just comment, let us know, and we're going to put you in the wheel of names, and you'll be surprised at what you might win Friday. So to your question, what is influence? Cialdini is talking about influence and persuasion, right? So having influence over someone is being able to persuade him, and he has like 6 principles of what that means, and persuading him to do other things. But there are other people like Michael Roderick that was with us last week that are talking about a different kind of influence, and it's to have people be there when you ask them, right? So there are so many amazing people out there that have no social proof, if you will, right? They don't have tons of followers. They might not be posting a lot. They might not be engaging a lot, but they have like really strong influence behind the scenes, and they can pick up a phone and call and get things done. And they're wealthy, and they're running things behind the scenes that you don't even know about. And so the question is like, does influence have to be an online thing, right? Like, does the number of followers that I have means that I'm influential if I can't even sell 32 shirts? Or is it really having a relationship with an audience that you can kind of like take with you, like Gary Vaynerchuk or like other people often online, and actually get the things that you want done? So
I don't think the numbers have anything to do with that. I think people get hung up on numbers and metrics and subscriber counts, and it's distracting, and it's a game that these websites are playing very specifically to get you to chase down, right? To get you to chase, well, two things. One, they want you to stay on the platform longer, obviously, because they get to sell more ads to you. And so if they gamify, which they did a long time ago, they gamify subscribers, make you want to see that number go up, it's going to lead you to doing the types of things that make it more likely that it's going to make that number go up, which are not usually, if ever, the things that would actually help your business or make the work you do better. And they also want you to they want to get you to hit that boost button, right? If your goal is to get the number to go up, then you're going to hit that $5 boost and that $5 boost and that $5 boost, right? And so I have to tell you, I get calls from kind of industry acquaintances, folks in the speaking industry. I've taken calls over the last few years from folks who have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of followers, and they call me and they go, Miller, you have less followers on Instagram than the average 15-year-old, right? How are you booked solid all the time? And I'm like, because I don't get bookings from Instagram. I get them from my industry relations, and I've made deep, meaningful connections. Right, it's a difference between wide and going deep. Right, I have really deep, meaningful relationships and connections with a small handful of folks who, like we talked about when I first came on the show at the beginning of the lockdown, where within 1 week I made a couple of calls and instantly built an entire new business for myself without doing any advertising, because I had plenty of influence with a handful of people who trust me implicitly from years. One of my mentors and friends, Tim David, he wrote one of the great modern books on influence called Magic Words, all about the words we use to influence and persuade. And he's kind of a student of Cialdini and all of them as well. And you know, Tim said something when he came on my podcast last year that was so good. He said, we don't do influence, we have influence.
Right.
And it's a big difference.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Hold on a second. We have someone from Twitch asking, are you guys from San Francisco? Are you Brian?
No, I'm from Buffalo, New York. Buffalo's having a hard time. We don't have to talk about that.
Yeah, and so, no, we're not, sorry. And then Stuart is saying, influence is that which creates change or the ability to change, whether online or offline. Yeah.
That's interesting. Notoriety helps both. I'm going to agree that notoriety helps you get people to do things. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or not. I think notoriety often leads to unintended consequences, which is when you have influence without meaning to have influence, right? If you're like J.K. Rowling's in the news again, not for good reasons, which has been the theme for the last couple of years.
What happened?
Which is too bad. Well, she made some very transphobic statements again. And so Daniel Radcliffe and a whole bunch of other, all the Harry Potter people came out against her. And it's weird to see Harry Potter getting kind of taken away from the creator after the last couple of years. Like, you know what? We need you to distance yourself from this thing that we love. And so what's happened is this woman is one of the most famous people on planet Earth, which means she has influence whether she likes it or not. And so things she says matter. And there's a responsibility that comes with having influence that I don't think enough people really understand or take on.
Which is
because most people want to be famous.
Yes.
Right? They're focused on the idea of wanting to be famous, but not thinking about that when you become famous, there's influence that comes with it, whether you want it or not. Yeah.
Right. And that's where you kind of like, you have to really consider that, right? Like if you want to be famous and you want to say the same things that you were saying before you became famous, what does that mean and how that affects you? I was in a conversation with a lot of marketers, and many people said, hey, how come we're not speaking up? How come we're not using our influence during this time to talk about everything that's happening and have a stance? And a lot of people were like, well, I don't want it to hurt my business, right? And there's this issue with like, well, if the business fails, then I cannot support myself and I cannot serve people and I cannot do anything. But then what if you stand for something and then you attract more people because you stand for something? So we're very weird times that we're standing here, right? Like, hey, who do you want to attract? Who do you want to repel? How do you position yourself? Do you want to be an influencer?
Yeah, well, that's the difference between brands that actually have vision and actually stand for something. The brands that stand the test of time, brands that have stood the test of time have always stood for something, and which is why back with Colin Kaepernick, right? Like back when that actually originally first blew up, it was, I think this is something Seth Godin talked about, but like it was such an easy thing for Nike to stand with him because it fit the brand. And Nike has had a vision and a mission statement for decades that fit with it. It would have been really weird if Hilton had come out in support of Colin Kaepernick, because they're like, I don't know what Hilton stands for. They're just a logo, right? They're just a green H, right? And so if you're a commodity business, which is basically what hotels are now, right? If you're a commodity business, if you sell pens, you should probably stay out of politics online. Now, I think you should do the right thing in your personal life and be on the right side and be encouraging, be against police brutality and be for Black Lives Matter. And I think in your personal life, but as a brand, do we need the manufacturer of pens, in our local, do we need them to stand up for something? I don't know. But if you're not in a commodity business, how could you not stand for something, right? If you have a service, you have to know who you're serving, and it can't be everybody, because then it would be a commodity.
Is scale a luxury that we don't I'm trying to, this is one of those things where I'm like, I got an idea, but I'm not sure I can articulate it right. All right, Ben and Jerry's, right? Like Ben and Jerry's comes out and basically is like, F the white supremacists. Like they just laid it out, right?
Yeah.
And that there are going to be some people that are like, well, I'm not buying Ben and Jerry's anymore. And I think Ben and Jerry's is like, that's fine. We'll just rely on the other however many million people that buy our ice cream every year. But if you're the local pizza shop and you want to feel like you're messaging to your community about community values, is there actually an argument for thinking about it before you do it? Because you don't have that scale where you can ride it out. You know what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying. I know where that's coming from. And I think my instinct is, if you're going to go into business for yourself and not, because it's so hard, right? It is so much easier to just clock in and clock out and get a paycheck. Not that those jobs aren't hard, but going into business for yourself and staying in business for yourself is so incredibly difficult. And if you're going to put up with that and deal with that, why not stand for something? Otherwise, what's the point? You may as well do work that matters and work that you're proud of and work you're happy to call yours. And so if you are like, well, I stand with Black Lives Matter, but I'm afraid to say that because I think my pizza shop will fail, well, then are you really proud of the work you're doing if all of your customers support police brutality against minorities, right? Is that work you're proud of?
So I'll talk. I'll play the devil's advocate and talk as a Jew, right? If you, Paul, I'm gonna go to there.
What? I didn't even do anything.
Paul, you're so small, and yet you're still getting yelled at. You're still getting yelled at.
I giggled a little at the delivery that she was like, I'm gonna just, and then she was like, and talk as a Jew, and I was like, okay, all right.
I'll tell you what, right?
Yeah, because that matters. Do it, yeah.
Anti-Semitism is a real thing, right? And when you look at me, you don't think Jewish. You think Hispanic, you think Latin America, you think many other things, right? But you don't think Jewish. So I might have been, able to skate by and not get any anti-Semitic reactions towards me. I have a friend who was walking in Miami, in Florida, and at night he has a yarmulke. Pretty big guy, right? 6 feet, pretty heavy and stuff. 2 white guys came, one bended behind him, pushed him over the other guy, and he started, and he got beaten up, sent to the hospital. There was news report and all that stuff. So if I have a business, a pizzeria and everybody knows I'm Jewish and I stand for something, I attract automatically all the anti-Semitic people, all the hate, all the, misconceptions and all that stuff. So I'm not only trying to stand for something, but I'm also putting my life at risk and other people's life at risk just because everybody else knows that, this is a Jewish business that I need to, that if I want to make a statement, this is where I go to, kind of like the churches, the synagogues that were shot at. So standing for something, it's fantastic, but it's like, it also comes with the question of like, what am I inviting into my life that I'm going to have to deal with because I stand? Am I going to be Molotov, am I going to be burned down? Am I going to be, like there were synagogues here in Austin that they woke up the next morning and they had a head of a pig in front of the door, or like, graffitis and stuff like that. So there's a reason for skating by, right? If you own a business, if you have a family, if you have all that stuff, sometimes you're like, okay, well, I don't want to attract attention to myself and have to deal with everything that comes with it. The counter argument for that is my son's dad, who's African American, and he goes like, hey, I wear this on my skin. I can never escape it. I have to stand for something, right? Because otherwise, yeah. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that. So first, I'm half Jewish, half my family's 100% Jewish. So I grew up with the culture, which is funny because first time we met, I thought Jewish right away. So because I saw your hair and I saw and I was like, that's like all of my cousins. You look exactly the same. So like I saw it right away.
Few ones, right? Like most people go like, hola, ¿cómo estás? ¿Qué quieres comer?
Yeah. And you have a very Jewish attitude about you, and I mean that in a very positive way. So I get that. And what you were just saying though is I've always like, if I'm worried, a year or two ago, my wife and I were going to see Fiddler was coming through Connecticut, and it was the week before in Philly when they had the attack in the middle of the theater on that exact tour. So a week later, we were seeing that exact show now in Connecticut, and there were lines for 2 hours. They said you have to get her hours early. Where metal detectors were waving. It was insanity, oh, wow. Right? And I remember while that was happening for a few months, I toned down. I just stopped talking about anything Jewish. I wasn't going to let anybody know I was Jewish. And that is one, obviously, I get what you're saying, but the fact that I was able to just stop talking about it and protect myself, that is an incredible privilege.
Yeah.
That, right, like you said, people of color, Black people right now in America in particular, they don't have that. And so I feel like there is an obligation, like even just, one of my friends recently said, like, there's too much right now. I need a mental health day. I'm just going to turn off social media. And it's like, yeah, and you have the ability to do that. Right? That is some privilege to be able to turn it off for your mental health. Because you know what? My Black friends can't turn it off.
Yeah, that's a great point, Brian. That's a great point.
Yeah. So here's something that Stuart is saying. Write it out and the community will support, or just don't locate in KKK Town. That is wrong, Stuart.
Yeah, I agree.
Just don't locate in KKK Town. That's not.
I think he's speaking. Wait, though, in fairness, like there's probably a little more context behind the sentence. Like it is possible that you could read, like when you're starting a business, you can read the room, like, and you can say like, this is just like you could choose to not buy a house in a community where you're like, this community doesn't seem to share my values. Probably not the best place to start up.
This is what we're fighting for, right? This is exactly what we're fighting for, that you don't have to be like, hey, is this a KKK town? Is it safe for me here? We want
right, but again,
right.
What I think is, I think there's a little truth to what Stuart's saying, though, is like if you can read the room, and say the community values don't align with mine, it like you can choose. It's like saying if a business has social value that you don't agree with, you can take your business elsewhere. I think it's that same thing on at least some level, right? As you could say, I'm not going to be part of a community that doesn't support people in the ways that I think are important, right?
Yeah,
like,
this is it. I'm sorry, Paul. This is interesting. There's a lot of nuance there that you just brought out.
That's what I'm saying. I think, that's what I meant. Really, is there might be more. Yeah.
I tend to immediately think of service because I've always been in a service industry, and and so as a speaker, a magician, whatever, I'm a service. I'm not a commodity. I'm not a product, and which means I can really choose my clients. I can decide, no, I'm not going to work for those people, and I can put my messaging out to attract the right kind of people and turn down others. If it's your dream to own a local pizza shop and you live in a small town, that if you were born in, a small town that happens to be really prejudiced, and that's where you live and you've never been able to get out for whatever reasons, which happens all the time, and you're not like that, and it's just your dream to own a pizza shop, what do you do then? That's a great, there's a lot more nuance in
yes,
that.
Absolutely.
And and when you bring this up, right, like Black people cannot do what you and I are doing, right? They cannot be like, well, today I'm out, or today I'm not saying anything Jewish, I don't speak Hebrew. It's the same thing for people who cannot escape their environment, right? Like it's not always easy to move to a different location, or if the best school for your kid, it is in a white affluent neighborhood and you are able to buy a house over there, then what do? Education or living or community and stuff, right? Like there's so many nuances to these things here that I think this is what we're fighting for. We're fighting to have a safe environment for everybody, regardless of creed and race and language and religion and all that stuff.
Yeah, I think it's really worth noting, though, at least at some point, I'm sure all three of us have had this thought at this, but I didn't realize the conversation was going in this direction. I think it's really, really worth noting that all three of us, based on who we are and our own experiences, can be completely missing a perspective right now because we don't have a representative voice, any voices in the room that are representative. So we can be completely missing this perspective. And I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Yeah. It's a great point, Brian.
So back to influence and the relationship and the force, right? Like what we have to do. In the same way that there are different ways of being and standing up for things and, your safety and participating in the world. There's the vanity numbers, right? Like we were talking about all the people who seem to be very influential on social media. And there's real influence where you can actually create a movement, lead people, have people help you and support you, connect you with other people. And I think that's really what anyone's watching it should strive for, right? That real influence, the real relationship that you have with people offline that sometimes translates to online as well.
Yeah, I think one of the most, just to tie it with everything that we kind of talked about here right now, the best thing, especially if you are a person of privilege of any kind, the most influential thing you can do right now is stop talking and start listening.
Yeah.
I
agree. Yeah. There was this book that they shared about, what is it called? White fragility.
Mm-hmm.
That a lot of people are now sharing among themselves, and a lot of people, it kind of like pushes the buttons of white people. I'm not fragile. Why are you talking about that? That's racism. And I'm like, well, there's so many things that
there's a lot to do. There's still a lot to do.
Yeah.
That's I think it was funny how if you were paying attention, you saw some of this coming as soon as Obama was elected, because people started talking about the post-racial society that we lived in.
Right.
Right. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, you think just because he's the president, like it's all gone now? Like, like what?
Yeah,
like,
especially, oh my goodness, the conversations that I was in college. So I got to vote for my first ever election that I got to vote in was the first Obama election, which is kind of cool. Historically, I always get to be like, I voted for Obama the first time I got to vote. But I remember, so I grew up in an upper middle class, relatively well-off socioeconomic town, but it was an incredibly diverse socioeconomic town. So everybody was the same status socioeconomic, but everyone I went to school with was Black and Indian and Asian and gay and transgender. It didn't matter. And I really genuinely grew up in that environment. And I went to college in a tiny little college town in the middle of nowhere in upstate New York. And it was a great college, but I had never encountered anything like what I encountered in terms of racism and the phobia and the fear. And when Obama was campaigning, I remember I was so excited. I was talking to my friends. We were like, how exciting is it we get to vote for the first time ever in like this historic election, like Obama, this amazing guy, and he's speaking and everything. And I had multiple people that I was friends with until that point that I had never thought anything about who said to me, well, we obviously can't have a black president. And I was like, what? And then like you said, Paul, and then it was like, we're in a post-racial America. I was like, not with all the conversations I've been having for the last couple of months. I don't think it disappeared today. So yeah. It's been
what's really interesting is that we will have a black president before we have a woman president, right?
Yeah.
Still, we had the Me Too movement, and we've advanced so much in terms of women rights. But that one thing, right? That's like, oh, she's a woman. Like,
what singer? Who said "woman is the N-word of the world"?
Yes, that's true. That was
who was
that was. I wanted that. You know what? Let me. I wanted to say who I think it was, but I don't want to get that wrong.
Yeah, you don't want to get it wrong, right?
What's the N-word of the? What do you mean by that?
There was Brian will find it and he'll give you more context.
It's what I. Okay, it is what I thought. It's John Lennon. That's what I thought, but I didn't want to say that. Yeah, it is John Lennon.
Was it? Yep. All right.
What? So what does that mean? Yeah, I don't know what that means.
Well, so what he was trying to say is that like, so, you know, like woman is in all over the world. Like women are so relegated that it's like, just by being a woman, it's like you're the N-word for the entire world. Whereas the N-word is a very American, like, epithet, right? Like you don't really see. And so he was saying, now take that and expand it to the whole world, and that's where women are at.
Yeah.
You know?
That's interesting. Remember how they were talking about the director of Wonder Woman? And they're like, well, is it going to go wide because it's a female director? And so is it going to be a good movie? So obviously women can do everything except, direct. And then it blows up. It's a fantastic movie, right? But it's like, well, I guess, women can do that stuff. It's like, it's very interesting where we it's fantastic. Like, it's really interesting to see how we're changing, right? Like how much we've come and how much we still have to go.
Yeah, well, but I still think we're getting there. I think it's hard when these moments when it feels so messed up, right? But I still think I heard it the other day. Someone had grabbed a quote of Martin Luther King Jr. and he said the arc of the moral universe favors justice. And I think that I do believe that. I believe, like, I think back to when I was a kid and how things just in my lifetime, like that, it's like Ellen coming out on TV and the way that stirred things up, and how today there are so many more roles for LGBTQ people, than there were when I was a kid. And there's things like that they get easy. If you're a young person now and you've grown up, it'd be easy to take that for granted, that not too long, and I think there's these things that are happening, and I think that arc is favoring justice. It's just, we got a long way to go to finish that arc. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and you saw it over the last week. So for all the people that are like, obviously I don't condone violence, but it's hard to argue with what's going on right now. You can see where it's coming from. It's not, you know what I mean? Like you can go, I don't believe in violence, but look what got done in the last week. It finally just went, all right, we've been peacefully protesting for 5 decades. Enough's enough, right? And then boom, in 1 week, legislation all over the country changed. Charges have been upped. A huge national conversation. It's the only thing anybody's talking about. And it's like, all right, so, we can actually see in the last week progress happening, which is usually hard. It's hard because usually it's over 10 years, but a lot happened in a week. And I'm hoping that a lot more is coming as a result of this.
Yeah.
So with that interesting thing, we're going to sum up, right?
Yeah. So I think it just comes down to like, again, it'd be easy to watch this episode and think that we really didn't talk about like business very much. But I think, again, we always have said we talk about business and marketing and personal development, and you have to bring your personal development. Well, you don't have to, but I think most people, whether they know it or not, organically bring their personal development issues to their business. And Brian's already talked about that today too, right? That, you bring who you are to how you run your business and what you do about that. And so, thinking about what we talked about today, just is there a role for you to think of, like, whatever role of influence you have as a business person, what's appropriate, what's not appropriate for you? How do you cultivate that in a way that's meaningful, makes you feel like you're living your personal values, and being the best you can be? And how do you work that in? Like, do you strive to become an influencer in your business segment, in your industry, in your community? Those are, I think, reasonable questions to ask yourself.
Yeah. Go ahead.
If you're going to go into business, you may as well go into business to make the world better, even if it's just for your own little community. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yes.
And in your community, you do have influence. And so, for better and for worse, it comes with responsibility, and you are influential, even if you don't have 1 million followers on Instagram. So keep that in mind and stand for something that you want to stand for. Even if you don't have to wear it on your sleeve or on your skin all the time.
Right.
It's tough, right? You and I both, we play the when do I want people to know and when do I not want people to know. So it's tough. But,
big thanks to Brian Miller for hanging out with us today and being so eloquent and sweet and kind. Thank you, Brian. Always good to have you here.
Yeah,
thanks so much for having me.
Realize that we're not going to use Restream anymore.
My pleasure. That's what I'm here for.
And to sum up this beautiful thing, look at that! Big thanks, Brian. Twitch, fantastic.
Hello, on Twitch? Are we? We're on. I don't even know what Twitch is. This, you know how before we got on this, I was lamenting just privately that like so many people don't know how the internet works, and then I was like, oh, I'm that guy now.
So with that, I am going to end our segment. See you later.